Okay, so I didn't think I'd make this kind of video when I was making my music YouTube channel, but here we are. I wanted to show you, if you're a developer or if you want to get into development, how I made my first VFX script in Python. So yeah, let's take a look. So what we have is this plugin in FL Studio. It's called VFX Script. You can find it here and load it, and let's take a look at how it works. So you have your user interface and you have your script. So the script part is entirely Python, and you can write whatever code that you want. The easiest way is to go here and open script in external editor. I chose PyCharm. And yeah, I'm going to show you what I did in order to create the first script. So the first script is called KeyMod, and we can take a look in FL Studio. What it does is it allows you to transpose by semitones and octaves the pitch, and mess with the velocity. So you can mess by changing the bass velocity, by increasing or decreasing it, having a multiplier to your velocity, and having a minimum and maximum values, and a randomization knob. So let's see how this all works. So the first thing you need to know is that in each VFX script, you have 4 very important functions. And these are the ones that happen first here. So let's start with create dialog. This function, what it does is it creates the user interface for your script. So the first thing you need to do is to import the FL VFX in your script, and then you can use it to create your dialog. So you just create a new instance of an object called script dialog. You can give it a title and then a string that defines a short message for the user. This is that message here. Yeah. And then you can start adding your knobs and checkboxes and whatever user interface, function you want to add. So I've added groups to my script dialog, and these just group certain controllers under a group. For example, we have the pitch group here and the velocity group below it. And in between, you just need to click to write form.add, and then you add the user interface object that you want to add. So for example, add input knob int is adding a knob that can only go as an integer, so it only increases by 1 or 2 or whatever value you set it to, but it doesn't have float numbers. So you give it a name at first, and then you give it the default value and the minimum value and the maximum value it can go to. You can also set a hint, so when you hover over it in FL Studio, it's going to showcase that hint here in the left corner, like so. Yeah, so in this script, I have 2 knob ints and a bunch of knobs that aren't integers, they're float numbers. And the int knobs are for pitch, because I want pitch to be transposed in a integer manner, at least. I don't want it to go into fine-tuning pitch. I just want it to go by whole semitones or whole octaves. And the velocity, I do want to have float number control, because it allows me a much bigger range of control over the velocity. So as you can see, I've added all of the velocity related interface knobs, and I've also added a checkbox. And this checkbox tells the script whether to randomize the velocity or to not randomize the velocity. So the other 3 functions that happen here are very important. OnTriggerVoice takes the incoming MIDI voice that the user is playing and does something with it. So what we do is we create a new instance of a voice, and we send to that instance the incoming voice that triggered this function. Then what we do is we tell that modified voice that the note it's going to play is a modified note. And we also tell it that the velocity that it's going to play is going to be the modified velocity that we calculate here. And then at the end, we trigger that voice. So trigger is a function that's built into FL Studio's voice class. Then you have OnReleaseVoice. What this does is anytime a voice is being released, this function is being called. And in this case, we're running over all of the voices inside the VFX context voices. This contains all of the currently playing voices, and we check if the parent voice of the voice that we're iterating through is the same as the voice that was just released. If that is the case, we release that voice as well. Then we have the OnTick function. This function happens rapidly every second. It happens a lot of times. And what we do here is we go through all of the active voices and we copy all of their data from their parent voice. This is also a built-in voice function from FL Studio. And we set the note of these voices to be the modified note and the velocity to be the modified velocity. So what are these modified notes, modified velocity, and modified voice? So this is a class that I've made in order to alter the incoming voice. So this class inherits from the VFX voice class, which FL Studio uses every time a MIDI note is being played. And in the init function, we just get the incoming voice, which is of type VFX.voice. So what we do in init is we save that incoming voice as parent voice. We copy from that parent voice everything that we can, for example, the note, the velocity, and stuff like that. And then we get how much offset to that note we need to apply by semitones and octaves. So this is another function that I've made just to make it a bit easier. Basically, another built-in function in the form, which is our script dialog right here. It's called getInputValue. You send it the group name and then the name of your UI knob or UI checkbox, whatever, and it just gives you the current value that it has. So we basically get the current value of how much semitones we need to offset our notes and how many octaves we need to offset our notes by. Then we say that the modified note is equal to a small function called calculateModifiedNote. And this function, what it does is it first of all calculates the note offset, which is equal to the semitones offset plus the octave offset times 12, because 12 semitones is an octave. And then we just check that our note isn't passing below the minimum note value and above the maximum note value. If it does, then we return the minimum note value, and if it passes the maximum note, we return the maximum note, else we return the note plus the offset that we've calculated. Okay, great. So we have our modified note, which has all of the pitch UI changes applied to it. For example, in this case, -1 octave and +4 semitones. But now we need to calculate the velocity. So for that, we have a function, which is right here. And what this function does is it modifies the velocity. So first of all, it creates a class called VelocityMod, which contains all of the currently available velocity modifications that we can do. So yeah, let's see what it does shortly. It gets the velocity in the init function, and then it gets a bunch of user parameters: the minimum velocity, the maximum velocity, the base velocity, the multiplier of the velocity, and is the randomized velocity button being clicked? Is it enabled? So all of these functions are very simple. They all go to that one function that I've showed before. VFX context form, get input value with the name of the group and the name of the controller. And then they just apply that value to the self and the relevant property of that class. And they also return that value. Okay, so once we've initialized our VelocityMod class, we have a certain order of checking and applying modifications to velocity. So the first thing we do is we check if it is randomized velocity is on. So if it is on, then we enter this function, randomize velocity. So what it does is it uses the random module. It is imported here, and it uses the uniform function with a minimum velocity and a maximum velocity. So as you can see, the uniform function returns a random number in the range AB. So it will always return a number that's between the minimum velocity and the maximum velocity. So after we've checked if we need to randomize the velocity, we continue and we multiply the velocity. So we get the current multiplier value and we say that our velocity is equal to the current velocity times the multiplier. Then we add base to our velocity. So we check the base offset of our velocity and say that our velocity is equal to the current velocity value plus the base velocity that we've just acquired here. And at the end, we apply thresholds to velocity. We get the minimum and the maximum velocity values here. So we say, first of all, that the velocity is equal to the minimum velocity if our velocity is below the minimum velocity. Else it is equal to the current velocity value. And we also say that our velocity is equal to the maximum velocity if our current velocity value is above the maximum velocity value. Else it is equal to our current velocity value. At the end of all of that, we return the class's velocity property and we can continue. So we go back to here basically. So now we have the modified velocity and our voice has the two properties that it needs to start playing. So it has the modified note value and it has the modified velocity. And once we trigger any voice which is playing a note, the modified voice is being created with the incoming voice, and its note is equal to the modified note, and its velocity is being changed to be equal to the modified velocity that we've calculated. And only then, once we've made these modifications, we trigger that voice. And again, on tick, we first of all copy from our parent voice, and then we modify the note and velocity again. And once it's being released, it's just being released. There's no need to modify anything. So yeah, this is my KeyMod script. I'm going to showcase just a tiny bit of how it works. I'm going to just set a pattern and play one note. And you can see how it affects the playing. So let's demonstrate. Yeah, so this is pretty much it as for breaking down what the code does in my KeyMod script. I think that if you want to get into scripting for FL Studio, it's a fairly nice entry point, modifying velocity and pitch. And you can find the code in my GitHub, so you can take a look at it or just download the preset and just play with it. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.